Everyone, my name is Ryan and I am a Bible nerd. I have made it back to wonderful southern Utah after my crazy trip to Jerusalem during a pretty crazy time. Obviously, I wasn't planning on everything happening the way it did, but I wanted to just jump on here, add some content to my page. It's been a little while since I was able to add content, and I've got a bunch of clips to go through. I've got just a ton of footage from my GoPro cameras, a couple things I was able to post through my iPhone. So I'm just sorting through all of the videos and just kind of gathering my thoughts on this entire trip. But thought I would jump on here real quick and just map out some of the things that happened, just a couple of quick photos, and just kind of map out this crazy trip that I went on. So I pulled up here a Google Maps to kind of give you an idea how the whole trip started. So I live here in southern Utah. My first stop was clear over here in wonderful Washington, D.C. I'd never been there before. One of the big things I wanted to go to is right here is this guy, the Museum of the Bible. This was a first leg of this trip that was absolutely incredible. What a great museum. If you ever have a chance to go there, it's just really, really well done. In fact, I've got a photo here. Let me add that to let me throw that on right here. It's just kind of the front of the building. It was just really well done. The lighting was well done. The gift shop was great. There's so many wonderful things about this particular building. And of course, all the nerdy Bible stuff that was in there. The main reason I wanted to go there was not only for some Bible stuff, but they had the Megiddo Mosaic. The Megiddo Mosaic is absolutely amazing. It pushes back the date that the earliest Christians worshiped Jesus as God. So this idea that the Trinitarian ideas was a later development after the Nicene Creed in 325. You can see earlier on, that's the way they interpreted the letters from the early apostles and just how the whole Christian movement was coming out of this Judeo-Christian belief system. So it's just incredible to see this floor in the Bible Museum there in Washington, D.C. Plus, there was all kinds of cool stuff about translation history. They had all kinds of artifacts. And the day we went, we timed it to be able to do an after-hours event that was really a lot of fun. They have a C.S. Lewis exhibit that was there, and they tied that into this little play that we were able to watch. Then they had some activities within the museum itself that was kind of part of this after-hours event, and they still had to kick us out of there. We were there all day and had so much fun to kick off this trip to the Holy Land. So I just want to show you kind of a couple quick photos of that. Let me go back to the map real quick. Let's see, where did the map? Oh, here we go. Okay. So there we go, Washington, D.C., spent a couple days there. We also went to the Aerospace Museum. This was me and my wife. At this point, my wife headed back home, and I headed over to Tel Aviv. So from Washington, D.C., flew clear over to this little tiny country known as Israel. So here we go. Here's where Israel's at. And we landed here in Tel Aviv, which is a pretty high populated area right there on the coast of the Mediterranean. We're able to spend some time there. And this was on, I think, June 7th. So before the Rising Lion attack from Israel to Iran, which led into about a 12-day confrontation between the two. The U.S. stepped in, dropped some of those big bunker busters, all that kind of stuff. But this was before that. So we were in Tel Aviv before that happened. But it's pretty crazy watching some of the footage afterwards of some of the areas we were that now are getting all these bomb strikes. But we had left that area by then, and we actually went into Jerusalem. So I want to show you kind of here is the old city of Jerusalem. A couple first thoughts here. I just loved it in Jerusalem. I thought it was just absolutely amazing. And I was really surprised at how tall the city was, like all the skyscrapers, the big hotels, the big apartment complexes, office complexes. I was really surprised to see how tall they were, but so much of that city is on a hill. There's so many little rolling hills all over the place that you always felt like you were either walking uphill or walking downhill. There's not a flat place in Jerusalem. It really did surprise me how hilly and how many valleys and hills and valleys they are in this area, and how you can see so many psalms that are based on this idea of ascending to the Temple Mount, and just how everything kind of is on a hill leading up to Jerusalem. And then here, as you zoom in a little bit farther, you have what's known as the Old City. So I'll get in here, make sure it looks good on the screen. This right here is the Temple Mount, this area right here. It's now under Arab control. They have a mosque that's there. They have the famous Dome of the Rock, which is right where Solomon's temple used to be, that was eventually destroyed by the Babylonians and then rebuilt by King Herod and then destroyed again in 70 AD by the Romans. And so, but this is the Temple Mount where all those stories happen, all that New Testament history. This is exactly where that happened. What's really unique too is where the Dome of the Rock is. It has some Islamic traditions. It also has Solomon's temple. And then before that, Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac on this hill. It goes way, way far back of all the history that was at this particular location. And then just south of this is where the city of David is. We had a chance to kind of tour this area. It's very much on a hill, really quite a slope. In fact, if you go back here to the Temple Mount, this wall right here is the southern portion. It's really, really tall. And then it goes kind of flatter as it goes back to the north because it's just on a hill. I mean, that is on just a big decline. So to level off the Temple Mount, they had to kind of build up the south portion of it so it would remain flat. So this is really just an incredible place to be able to walk. Now you hear the Wailing Wall or the Western Wall is right here. So this is part of the Jewish quarter is right here. And to be able to walk that area was just sombering. It was amazing seeing the expression of religion and just how much they treated this place as a very, very special place within their culture. And so let me zoom in a little bit further. I had a chance. This video is not going to have a ton of different photos. I'm going to break this down a little bit further, but I wanted to add a couple to this video. Here's a picture from the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, and this kind of goes down a slope before you have to put on the little hats and then go into this area. It was just beautiful to be able to go and kind of put your hand on the wall. And in fact, I think I've got that picture here as well. Let me add that one really quick. So here I had an opportunity to just take a moment and just pray and for protection, just pray for just everything that was there. I mean, it's just such a religious experience. It was just such an amazing place, the history and the time and how important this was to the Jewish culture, because this is really the original wall of the Western Wall of the temple. And until they started doing some archaeology and doing some digging, this was the closest they can get to the Holy of Holies and where the old temple used to be. So this wall just has a lot of significance in the history. If I go back to the map, let's see, where is that? Oh, here we go. So we go back to, looks like I gotta remove that and then add this back in. Here we go. Okay. So if you see on this is kind of the Western Wall right here. And then right here is this big part of the building that actually goes underneath this Arab quarter here. And you can actually do tours that go underneath this wall. It's just incredible to see the archaeology and the things that they're doing that are basically under this city, and all the infrastructure they have to put in place and the columns and stuff like that to kind of keep the ceiling from just collapsing in. I've got some incredible film of going out down there and taking a look at the wall and just be able to go into the aqueducts and some of the stuff that was there. Plus, they were able to dig out even further that even predated other things. So it's incredible to be under this entire Arab quarter here that's right next to the Temple Mount and be able to go underneath it and just go to layer after layer after history that just goes back thousands of years. That's the thing that just is so mind-blowing to me. It's just all the history of three major religious groups all culminate right here in this particular area. So let's zoom back out. One of the other major highlights and one of the big things I was looking forward to was going over here to what's known as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So we walked in kind of right underneath here, and you walk into this little courtyard, and you end up seeing this incredible building here that houses where Jesus was crucified and where he was laid to rest in the tomb before he rose on the third day. So this has significance for the Christian faith. Obviously, it's a big part of our belief, the resurrection. And it always surprised me how close those two events were, the crucifixion and then the burying in the tomb. So let's actually take a couple photos here that I've got. First, I want to show you this one. This gives you kind of an idea of those two domes that you could see. This is kind of how it's cut up. You can see the cross there that shows where the crucifixion happened and then where the tomb was laid. All of that rock has been removed now, and now there's like a little tiny little building inside of that building. It was amazing coming around the corner and seeing that little building. And I got this photo that I thought turned out great. In fact, I turned it into the wallpaper on my phone because I just loved it so much. The way the light was coming through. This was just such a cool photo to be able to capture in this wonderful place. So this is the little building inside of that big dome. It goes up really, really high. There's all kinds of Christian iconography from 6 different denominations of Christianity. You have Armenians, you've got the Catholics, the Orthodox. They're all in there, and they all have different kind of sections within the main building. But this was really a pretty special place. So once you go into this little building, there's like a little room that's set up with some candles, and it's dark in there. They got some things hanging from the ceiling, and then you go through a little archway that goes kind of, you duck down to go into the room that's right underneath the kind of the little mini dome that you see there in the photo. And that's where you have like this rock slab that they believe that's where Jesus was laid in the tomb. So just incredibly sombering, just the memories that were just, and the reading of the Gospels just flushes your memory as you're sitting in the actual space where this happened. And there is some tradition that says it happened somewhere else, but there's just so much evidence that this is the place that it happened that just is just a beautiful reminder of the story actually took place. And to be able to walk the places that Jesus walked, where he went through his passion, all of those things is just, you just can't explain it. You've got to get yourself there. Obviously right now is a little tough, but if you've been thinking about going, you really need to go. It's just absolutely amazing. Here's kind of another view of that little building. Here's the front where you can enter it, and just has a lot of different iconography of different faiths that are kind of there. But I just thought it was just amazing. I've got some other videos of the Holy Sepulchre that I'll be posting, but I just wanted to throw up a few here on this kind of introductory video that I wanted to get out today. So let's go back to, let's remove that, but I just loved it. I just thought it was just such an incredible experience. So let's zoom out. Here is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre again. And then as you scroll out, this is all kind of within the old city. You've got the Dome of the Rock. You've got the Temple Mount over here. And then over here was probably the next big site that I wanted to see. This is the Garden of Gethsemane. And we parked up here, kind of up. I wonder if you can see my mouse. Yep. And from here down to here, it's a pretty good decline down to the Kidron Valley. And then it just rises right back up to the Temple Mount. So this is kind of in a low spot. That's why you see a lot of greenery where a lot of water kind of gets, anything comes off the cities, kind of funnels down into these ravines. And it was really quite a descent from the top of this. And then all of this brown area, kind of gray area you can see in there on the screen is all tombs. There's all kinds of tombs on there. A lot of them are Arabic or Islamic tombs that are there. That's a huge mountainside that's just full of tombs. And then you go down this little slope, you pass a couple of little churches, and then you come around this corner here, and you get to see the Garden of Gethsemane. This was such an amazing moment to be able to go there and show you. So let's remove that and throw this on here. So here's a video of being inside of that area where they've kind of roped it off for the olive trees that are still there. And just to be able to pray and remember the story of how he prayed to have that cup taken from him, but not his will, not Jesus's will, but the Father's will be done. Just an incredible moment in Christianity's story, and to be able to go where it happened just is such an incredible reinforcement of the events that actually took place. Also, you'll see here in this video, you will see this church here that is built over the top of one of the rocks that was there that they believe Jesus could have been kneeling on or could have been praying on the rock. We often see artwork of Jesus kind of on his knees up against a rock, just praying, just sweating drops of blood, all the story that we're so familiar with in Christianity. That's where it happened. And it's just a beautiful building that commemorates that enshrines kind of that protects this area within Christianity, to be able to go to those places, to be able to pray there, to be able to just reflect on the story, to walk where these stories happen. It's just such an incredible opportunity. There was obviously risk involved. Going over there is not the safest time no matter what. But then, of course, everything happened a few days after we were able to visit some of these places. But I want to just drop that video into this video. Just a beautiful garden, beautiful symbolism, just beautiful history, just archaeology, all those things just combine in this beautiful town of Jerusalem. I really thoroughly enjoyed my time there and wanted to kind of showcase that on this first video. But I've got so many other videos to go through that I'll be posting that'll highlight each of these spots. So now let's go back to the map. So here is the next couple places that I was really looking forward to. I think number one for me was the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. I really enjoyed that. Garden of Gethsemane, being able to see the Western Wall, all those three were really pretty close. But the other reason I was really excited about going to Jerusalem was to be able to actually go to here. So over here by the Dead Sea, so Jerusalem's here, and you go down this winding road, the Highway 1, it drops like crazy. In fact, right about here on the map is sea level. So everything from about this point down drops below sea level. Even at the Dead Sea, it's 1,280 feet, the lowest place on earth, below sea level. In fact, all of Jericho, the great story that you hear about the walls falling down in the Old Testament, you got that whole city here is actually under sea level. It just blows your mind to think that type of stuff. Most of my life, I've lived in the Rockies. I lived in the West here, the Wasatch Front. I've always been at like 2,500 feet or above. So to be at under sea level really was kind of a surprise. I don't know why that was. I didn't really realize how low it gets. But over here is what's known as Qumran. This is where they discovered a lot of caves along the Dead Sea that had these scrolls that were just in time capsules, essentially, for 2,000 years. It just is incredible to be able to see the accuracy of what we've been translating and working with now for centuries. We're just in these caves to be discovered in 1946 and have been reevaluated and looked at. In fact, the Great Isaiah Scroll is the first complete scroll of Isaiah that we've ever found. And to see how accurate it is to the translations and the Masoretic and the other creations of the Old Testament just really blows a hole in the idea that what we have is corrupted or mistranslated or any of those types of things. Now, believing whether it's true and it's God's word, that's a whole nother story. But the whole idea that somehow they're corrupted by popes and kings and humans over that entire time is just blown out of the water with these discoveries. It's one of the biggest discoveries for the reliability of the Bible. So here's this incredible area that has a pretty cool little visitor center that was there. And then you have this little archaeology find where they had cisterns, they had water things, they had purity things. This group that was out here was a group of Jewish people known as the Essenes. They were kind of forced out of Jerusalem because of the Hasmonean Empire, and there's a bunch of different things there. We'll get into Essenes, but basically it was kind of a group that was a bunch of monks of Jewish origin that went out here to just get away from the Hellenized, Romanistic influences that were happening in Jerusalem. And then here is this big cemetery that they found of all these tombs and people that had died out there that were part of this camp. And then you've got all these caves over here. There's a few caves where they found the scrolls of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they found a whole bunch up and down the Dead Sea because of its climate was able to preserve those scrolls incredibly intact. But the whole visitor center was beautiful. I mean, for me, this was one of the highlights of the trip, was being able to go to where they discovered these scrolls because of that. Bible reliability is something I'm really into. I just really love studying that stuff. Then, after that, we were able to go down to a place that I had never heard of. It's called, where is it here? Let me find it here. It's way down this way, a lot further down here than I thought. Let me just put it in. Masada is what it's called. And, oh, right there. Yeah, I was close. I was close on the map. This place was crazy. I didn't know anything about it. But this was a fortress that King Herod had built on this perfect protected plateau. I mean, this thing is nuts. So if you scroll in, we got an aerial view here. It really doesn't give you the idea of how sheer cliff that these areas are around this like natural fortified position. And so this King Herod built this as like a winter palace that he put all kinds of storehouses. I mean, this was just a fortified area in the middle of the desert. He also had his palace and everything kind of facing north. The views on this thing were just insane. I mean, you could see from Masada, like all of this canyon. You could see the Dead Sea. There wasn't much going kind of this way. The mountains were up here a little bit higher. But there's just a natural fortified plateau that was just a sheer cliff. You can see this little trail here. People will use it as like fitness challenges, and they'll climb this thing because it is not an easy climb. This thing takes the dragon's tail and the other things out there and just blows it out of the water. This thing would be brutal, especially in the summer, especially when we were there, just hot and dry. I mean, this thing would be really, really cool. In fact, there's little from the visitor center down here. Let's see, where is it? Right here is where they have a gondola that takes you up there. You can almost see in the photo, I don't know if you can see it there, you can see kind of the lines that take it all the way up here. And it takes a good second for it to get all the way up to the top. Up here is kind of where you land. And then you're able to just walk around this place. It's just incredible. What was really cool too is you could see like here and here and here are the Roman encampments to when they tried to take over this particular fortress. And so after the first revolt in 68 that led to the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, this was kind of another revolt. This was the final stand of the rebellions as they went to this place to try to wait out the Romans. And so the Romans created these siege areas to try to take over this. And it took them like 3 years to build up enough of a ramp here on this western side to even get into the Masada, because they had just storehouses. I mean, they could wait out. They have enough food and water to outlast like 3 years. So all these other camps out here had to get reinforced all the time. So it really was designed to be this area where they could stay for a long, long time, like the last stand, the last refuge. Just an incredible story. I've got a whole bunch of stuff I got to research on this. The way the battle ended with the Romans is pretty interesting as well. They've got all this storehouses over here. You've got the palace that was kind of on here on the northern rim. And so you had to kind of hike down to this. And then there was things to hike down to this. And then all the way down to here was like right out on the edge of this plateau that just looked forever. But it doesn't do it a lot of justice from an aerial photo of just how sheer, cliffs that this thing was and just how fortified this area was. And then you could just see from kind of these edges here, you could see this embankment. But I mean, this is just a huge gully right here on this western northern side. It's a little less steep here, but it's dramatic. It really is steep. But I didn't know anything about this place. So as I put together the videos, when I was able to walk around there, I'm going to do a little study, a little explanation of what this whole place was called Masada. So then we zoom back out. We drove back up all the way back to Jerusalem, clear back up here. And then Thursday morning, Jerusalem or Israel attacked Iran, attacked their nuclear facilities, their nuclear capability. That was on a Thursday morning at 3 a.m. Then on Friday the next day, Friday morning, we were supposed to go up to Haifa. Haifa's up here to start seeing some of the stuff that's part of the Christian story, up here by the Sea of Galilee. Haifa's kind of the port coast city that's right here. It's probably the next most densely populated area outside of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and then Jerusalem itself. So kind of Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa are the major cities in the country of Israel. And our whole plans got changed, obviously, as missiles started flying, sirens started going off. I've got some videos of some of the Iron Dome knocking down missiles above us. It was really pretty crazy. I remember one night we got called to go into the nearest bomb shelter, and we were down there with maybe 50 other people and just kind of waiting it out, waiting for other alerts to see if those were actually going to land there in Jerusalem. And I remember as we came out after the alerts kind of subsided, you could feel the rumbling, something south of us where bombs were going off. And it was just these rumbles of like boom, 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 boom. You could just hear it, almost feel them. So that was pretty amazing. I don't feel like I was ever really crazy scared at that point, but it definitely was pretty amazing to watch that people group have to interact and deal with that on a more regular basis, that they would have sirens go off all the time that would warn them that some sort of missile was coming from Gaza, coming from Yemen, coming from Iran, wherever it was coming from. They all had all these safety systems and all these bomb shelters all over the place. It just really is pretty crazy. I mean, you got Gaza down here. Here's kind of Gaza in relation to Jerusalem. This is where all the October 7th happened, where they started breaching these walls and just going through this whole area and kidnapping people and murdering people during that October 7th thing. And walking around Jerusalem, it was a constant reminder. We actually picked up a book that kind of talks about the day in October, is the kind of a best-selling book there in Jerusalem that we've been reading, that just tells the story of all the people and what happened during that incredible event. And here we are, 2025, almost 2 years later, and there's still hostages that were taken from that day in October. It just is incredible history and confrontation that's in this area. But to be able to go where Jesus walked, where he talked, where he preached, where he died, where he was resurrected, I don't know if there's words to really explain it, and to see how close all those events really were. But to be able to walk, talk, touch the walls, do that of that area, I don't know if I'll ever forget. It's something that it's going to stay with me forever, and I really hope I can get back. My wife's not going to like it. My mom's not going to like it. They were probably more worried about me being there than anybody just because of what had broken out. And I keep thinking they're going to name this something. This battle, this war will be named something. It'll just be crazy to think that I was in Jerusalem the day that war started and left right about the time that it ended, almost after some of the other strikes. But it never seems to end there. It doesn't seem to end. They just rename it. There's just some downtime in between battles is really what it is. But it's just an incredible place. The history, the age, the expression of different religious groups that are just on full display is so, so beautiful. I absolutely loved it. Well, here's where the story takes a turn. So we decide we're going to have to get out of Jerusalem, and we can't go to Tel Aviv. The airport there is closed, and bombs are going off like crazy in Tel Aviv. Warnings all the time are going over. So the only option we have is to go to Jordan, which is right here. So just across this area here, or just past Jericho, is now the country of Jordan. And I really didn't know anything about Jordan. I didn't study anything, wasn't planning on going there, just didn't have any idea. So we ended up staying here in this town that's just kind of south of the capital. You got Amman, Jordan up here. Then you've got Madaba, which is just right here, that is really a pretty impressive little city. So let me zoom in to kind of where we stayed. So here we go, right here. So here's kind of the city as you come in. And then right here is this church that is called, right here, the St. John the Baptist. It's actually a shrine for the beheading of John the Baptist. That's really what its claim to fame, if you will, or what it commemorates. And it has this little tour that you do to go down into the basement to be able to understand the story of John the Baptist's beheading. And then right here you can see in the photo there's this bell tower. And from the basement, you can work up the staircase to go up to the top of the bell tower. And it has 4 windows facing all 4 directions that overlook the entire city. This is one of the high points in the entire city. And then you go to the bell tower, you're in the highest point of the highest spot to be able to see the entire city. It was absolutely incredible to go each window and look around this entire city and just all the history that was there. And then we actually stayed right here. So we stayed right here at the St. John's Hotel, which actually was really reasonable, had breakfast, the beds were great. I was really impressed with this little hotel that we were able to stay at. And it was really last second. We didn't have plans to stay there. We just tried to find a place. And then right here, basically right across the street, is a mosque that every 5 times a day would go off with sirens and would go off with prayer announcements and warnings to pray that would just echo through the town. The same message would go to every mosque that was in there. So there'd be a slight little delay that you could hear kind of echo through the town. But just to see that display of religion on full display and people rolling out their mats to do their praying I thought was just amazing. And just to have it right there, it was a little bit noisy because we were so close with our hotel that you definitely could hear it. I mean, it was right outside the window. It looks like it's further away, but I mean, we stayed kind of right there on the edge of it, and you could just see it. It's a very tall mosque. And then down just from there is right here, a Greek Orthodox church known as St. George's. And what the claim to fame here is it has a mosaic floor that has a map of the promised land of Jerusalem with the Cardo and kind of old city walls that was built right into the floor. It's one of the oldest maps of the Holy Land, the Holy City, that is on the floor of this church. In fact, there's a ton of mosaics in this town from the Byzantine Empire. There's even over here a little museum that I was able to tour that is over here. Right here, there's archaeology and a whole bunch of floors that they found. In fact, this town is known as the City of Mosaics. A lot of the gift shops, a lot of the things that were there were doing mosaics. And it was just kind of a really big theme. It's a big reason why people go there is to not only go to a couple of these churches, but also to be able to see all the mosaic floors from the Byzantine Empire. So that is really cool. And then over here, let me just have Mount Jordan, Nebo. So just outside the town. So we've got kind of right here is where we were staying. So hopefully that's showing up on my screen here. So right here we were staying. And then just kind of on the way into town, you have what's known as Mount Nebo. You have to kind of climb up this. Oops, let's see. You have to kind of get from here, kind of getting through the ports to get to Jordan. Then you kind of climb up this windy road. And you get to this site here known as Mount Nebo. Let me zoom in here. Make sure it looks good on the screen. This place was beautiful. It was really well maintained. It had this long kind of walkway from here. You'd park down here or have the cab drop you off. And you kind of walk up a little steady hill to kind of this flat area up here. Then you kind of rise up again and go into this incredible memorial of the Church of Moses. So what this area commemorates is in Deuteronomy chapter 34, Moses gets to Mount Nebo and overlooks the promised land, not able to enter it, but God kind of takes him up there, shows him the promised land. And from this point, which is like 2,400 feet above sea level, with the Dead Sea over here at minus 1,280, you really could see a lot from this viewpoint. This is kind of right here on this ridge. You could see this part of the Dead Sea. You could see Jericho in the distance. You could see all this green valleys and stuff that were just here to the north. You could see the edge of Jerusalem. The day they had a little bit of smog, a little bit of dust in the air. There's some fires around, so it was a little bit smoggy to be able to see all the way to Jerusalem. But you could definitely tell when Moses was sitting up here, the view of this entire valley from that one spot is absolutely breathtaking. It was so cool to be there. And then the building, let me zoom back in here. The building itself really surprised me because it had a church kind of the main part of the building up towards the front of it. Then it had all of this like museum quality protected mosaic floors that were like in glass. So you'd walk on the glass, and below it was this mosaic floors from all the way back to the Byzantine Empire. And then there was like active dig sites of what they were continuing to work on. So it was just incredible to be able to see this building that was complementary to a church, to like an active dig site, to an actual like museum. And the way the space was designed didn't feel like any one of those things was fighting for time or space or lighting, or it really was beautiful to see kind of those three different things all in the same building, and how it respected the church, respected the dig site, if you will, and had like museum quality displays that were all in this same building. I just was amazed that whoever's the architect was, whoever designed this building, did a really good job to make sure you felt like each of those sections was not stepping on another, or that was like intruding on the other. It just was such a well-designed building. I just absolutely loved it. And there's a little guy there that was the father, because it is, I believe, a Catholic area or a Catholic church. And I even think there was some notes of some popes that had visited there, that type of thing. He was this little Italian guy. I had a chance to talk to him for a little while. It was just amazing. And if I can zoom in a little bit further here, it's kind of blurry from the photo, but this is a really big statue that is commemorating when Moses tied a serpent around, like a brass serpent, and lifted it up, because while they were wandering through the desert, snakes entered the desert, was biting everybody. And so the Lord told him to put a brass serpent and to kind of stick it on the ground. And then you see the Gospel of John use that same imagery, that the Son of Man would be put on the pole, that everybody that believed in him would be saved as well. And I've got a little souvenir that I got. Let's see if I can get this on the screen. So this is kind of what it looks like. I don't know, the lighting's probably, let me tilt it a little bit. So it has kind of a really beautiful artwork to it. It's got like a little snake at the top. It's wrapped around the stick. And so this is a big monument that's right there that commemorates that idea of Moses putting that brass serpent up on that stick, and then how John related that as what happened with Jesus. So that's what we see here at this incredible location. And the view from this little point right here was just awesome. It's up on this point. It really drops down right here and then drops down like crazy going into Jericho. You got the Moses Spring over here. This area here was just beautifully green. It was right between like two little valleys. This place is just crazy hilly. There's just so many hills on this place. So that was an unexpected treat to be able to go to Mount Nebo that you read about in Deuteronomy, where Moses looked over the promised land, looked over that entire valley on all that before the Israelites go into Jericho and take that first city, and then eventually start working their way throughout the rest of the promised land. The next thing we got to talk about is another unexpected stop, and this is what's known as Petra. This is probably the most known site in Jordan, and doesn't have a lot of biblical history with it. There is a little bit there, but this area, Petra, was really, really crazy. I didn't think I'd ever go to this place. So I want to show you, let's see. So up here is the visitor center. and it's just a huge like museum here. There's all these bus stations. I mean, this is one of the major travel destinations. And we got to see it when tourism's just really low, especially after everything broke out. If people were planning on flying into Jerusalem or Amman or something like that, they probably had to cancel their trip after everything happened. So it wasn't a ghost town by any means, but we got to see it without just a ton of people, which made it kind of interesting. But they have a huge visitor center here, and then you'd walk down this little dirt area. You can even maybe, I wonder if you can see, yeah, you can see all the people even in the photo. I mean, this is a big tourist destination, but you kind of walk down this little slow grade the whole way. There's a couple of little gift shops as you're going down. And then as you get to here, there's like a little carved area that was pretty cool, like just right here at the top. And then as you go down, you enter this little thing. This is one of the big famous parts of going to Petra, is this little windy canyon that really reminded me of like Lake Powell if it didn't have water, when you're able to kind of take your little wave runners or kind of channel down and just have sheer rock that's just red and goes up forever. I mean, I just was really, really cool. And it just winded down this canyon, which is beautiful, the rock, and you just kind of worked your way down this canyon. I mean, it never was so tight where you had to squeeze in or anything like that. I mean, it was fairly wide, but not wide enough for like an army to be able to travel down there without just getting funneled down. And that's what made this really a fortified area, because any army that would try to come into this area would have to get funneled down to maybe 4 or 5 wide with their equipment. So it really just turned them into just a small little funnel. And then right when you come out of it, so I think it was like a 1.5 kilometers or so is how far it was, kind of from when it started to narrow, all the way down here in beautiful rock. I mean, it's just so cool. And right when you pop out of this little canyon, you've got kind of the first major carvings. It's right out of the rock. Let me find that photo. I've got the picture here. So here is what's known as the treasury. You can see me standing there. This thing goes up for 200 feet. I don't even know how tall it is. All carved right out of the rock face. So none of this was brought in and stacked there. It's all carved out of the rock. And to just see how meticulous it was and straight and massive this thing was just so awe-inspiring. And how they built it and how they made it is unbelievable. There's even like tombs underneath this thing that are carved out of the rock. There's not really much on the inside. It's actually pretty simple on the inside. Like all of the effort was to make the front of it just look really, really elaborate. It was just crazy to kind of come out of that canyon and boom, this thing was just sitting there. It's featured in Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's where this is featured. And there's a couple other movies that have been there. I think Transformers recently had a video there. And a couple other movies have been filmed in this area. But that was unexpected. I didn't have any intention of going to Petra, and to be able to kind of turn our trip into that, because once we got to Petra, or once we got to Jordan, we weren't able to fly out until like Sunday. In fact, we had our tickets booked for Thursday. They got canceled, moved to Friday, then they got moved to Sunday, as airspace was constantly being kind of turned on and off. Flights were canceled all over the place. Some of the carriers just stopped going there. So that was a big thing too. They kind of limited down the carriers, which also limited your options of getting out of there. So we just said, well, we're kind of stuck. We might as well go see Petra. We're never going to be closer. So why don't we just go make the best of it and go down there and do it? So let me go back to my map here real quick. Where is the map? Here we go. So this was really cool to be able to see this whole thing, to see the treasury. And if you zoom out here, there's these other incredible carvings that are kind of on this side of the wall. And then you go down here a little ways. This was kind of a more open area that had a bunch of tombs. They were all just carved out of the rock. A lot more little tiny tombs, maybe the people that worked there, that lived there. Then you had this really big theater, is what it's called. It's all carved out of the rock, kind of this C-shaped thing with a flat thing down at the bottom. You could tell that's where they have their plays or their theaters or entertainment or whatever it was all done right here. And there was all kinds of carvings that were carved. And then as you go down further, there's all kinds of tombs. There was a Byzantine church. There was all kinds of, the Great Temple is there. This is kind of where it really opens up to a lot more buildings. Then you go down kind of more of the ravine. And then where is the monastery? Let me find that. It was right around here somewhere. There's another like really crazy cool carving. But this was cool. I mean, being able to walk through this canyon, go to the treasury, see these tombs that were there, to see this theater that was there, just so crazy. And it was about maybe 3 hours to drive from Petra to where we were staying clear back up here. Where did we go here? Yeah, it's quite a way. So right here. So we were staying up here, drove clear down here to Petra. On the way, we even blew a tire. So not only do we have missiles flying overhead, alerts going off every day at 3 and 4 in the morning, now we also blow a tire on the way down there. It was pretty crazy. But the crazy thing, we thought once we got to Jordan, there wouldn't be as many alerts because they weren't really being attacked. The problem is the airspace to go from Jerusalem to Iran, which is over here. So Iran here, even Iraq is right here. Here you've got Iran over here. So you've got Iran launching missiles from kind of this area over here to Jerusalem. You've got Jordan kind of right in the air path. So even though we didn't have anything land or attack that particular area, they were worried and set off alerts a lot that if shrapnel and just missiles missed their target or just fell to the ground, that could just be land on this particular area. I mean, it's crazy to think the capital of Jordan had missiles going over it back and forth between these two countries. And even Saudi Arabia or even Iraq had the same kind of thing, and they just were kind of wait and see and not really doing anything, which really surprised me. I thought if Iran is kind of launching these attacks, maybe Jordan or Iraq would also help out or get involved and also throw a bunch of volleys that way. Because that was really the goal of Iran. They targeted civilian populations, Tel Aviv, Haifa. These aren't military areas. They were just sending as many bombs as they could, hoping even 10% would get through, and a few did. There's definitely people that have still died on the Israeli side. But it's amazing to see the Iron Dome in action, the David Sling, just to look up in the sky and watch these missiles intercept each other was just incredible to see. So then we can't leave Jordan until Sunday. Well, I started thinking, well, now that we've kind of seen Petra, we've seen Mount Nebo, we saw kind of the sights, if you will, didn't really want to spend any more time there than we had to. So I started looking at flights. I really want to get back to Rome. That's one of my big hit lists. I love going to Rome, but the flights to get there were really complicated with the air routes and try to get there, and they were really more expensive. But an option popped up to be able to fly to here, to Cairo. So from Amman to Cairo, I was able to fly to just also get out of that airspace, get away from all the sirens all the time, and just be able to go see Cairo. Had no idea I'd ever go to Cairo. Didn't have really a huge interest to see the pyramids or anything like that. But hey, when life throws you missiles, you might as well make the most of it. So I go to Cairo. This city is absolutely bonkers. 22 million people live in Cairo. I had no idea it was that dense, that dusty, that dirty. Trash was a lot of places that we went. I was just blown away at the density of people that were there. We drove by this a few times. It's a citadel that used to be a big mosque, and it is massive. This thing's kind of on a hill. You could see it from almost everywhere. This place was a huge complex that you could drive right on kind of the major highway that goes right in front of it. There's some gardens that were here, but this citadel just raised up out of the ground. I mean, it was just unbelievable, this huge citadel. And then down here, they had probably one of the most impressive museums I've ever been to. So they have all these active dig sites. They have this huge lake, and then they have this huge museum known as the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization. They've got some crazy mummies in this place. I think in the basement of the structure was like 20 mummies. In fact, 3 of them I was able to go down and view. You can't take cameras or anything down there. You could do filming up on the top level. So the top level actually had kind of the earliest discoveries and kind of looped around every era. And it was just cool to see some of that stuff, the artifacts that they had on the top level. And then down in the basement had all the mummies. And there's 3 of them they had in there that were during the time of the Exodus. It's been narrowed down to maybe one of them is the most likely candidate for the pharaoh that's involved in the stories in the Bible. But there's kind of 3 that were within that era that could have been the pharaoh that's discussed. So it's just crazy to see him in this whole glass tomb that had his hands kind of crossed, had his fingers and toes exposed, the face was exposed. And just to think this guy's been dead for 3,000 years. And here, almost 4,000 years, I had a chance to be able to kind of to see him. It just was crazy to think about that. And so I spent some time in this museum here. I flew in the night before, had kind of the day to do a bunch of stuff, and was flying out late that night. This was Friday. So I got in late Thursday, started doing stuff around 8 a.m., had to be back to the airport by about 11 p.m. to catch a flight to New York City. So it was an all-day thing. And then the flight from Cairo goes to Saudi Arabia for a layover, and then goes over to New York City was like a 12 and a half hour flight on top of running around doing all this other stuff. So it was a crazy 48 hours from leaving Jordan, going to Cairo, going to New York, and then back home to Las Vegas. So here is the museum. Really recommend it if you ever have a chance to go to Cairo, but just be prepared. It is, you can see in this aerial photo, this place is so dense with people. It is such a highly dense people. There's this huge bridge that goes over the Nile. And I had a chance to do a Nile River cruise, like a 2-hour cruise, included dinner, just trying to kill a little bit of time before I had to go back to the airport. Because there you can't go to the airport until it's within 3 hours of your flight. So if you show up too early, you can't be there. So it's like, well, I don't want to just sit somewhere near the airport. I'd rather do something. So I was able to get a pretty good price on just doing this dinner river cruise on the Nile. And just think how ancient this river system is, how this is just fed millions and millions of people off the Mediterranean, working its way down through Egypt. Like all the population of Egypt follows this river, and most of it's here in Alexandria or in Cairo. So then, of course, the big reason to go to Cairo, the big reason to go to Egypt outside of Alexandria is to be able to go to the pyramids. So here you have Cairo, you have the airport that's up over here, you've got the museum, and then all of a sudden, boom, here's the pyramids. This is crazy. They were really a lot closer to the city than I thought they would be. I don't know what it is. I mean, obviously, when you're there, it's about 12 kilometers worth of space that all this stuff is. So the way you can work the camera and the way it's kind of on a little bit of a hill, you can really film it to where you don't see any civilization whatsoever. And I'm sure they've done that on purpose to make sure they preserve this area for tourism, because it's a huge draw for people to go see the pyramids. Even during this time, it was the most crowded area outside just the city in general of any tourist destination I saw during my entire trip. There's still a ton of people were there at the pyramids. So you come in here, you can see the Great Sphinx is right here. In the background, you've got these mountains. These things are huge. I did not expect them to be quite that big, and how truly impressive and old these things are, and just all the stories about how they were built and where they were built and why and all that. These things are massive. They're just insane. One of the tallest things you'll see in the entire city. And then down here, you've got all these little burial sites. You got all the worker sites. You've got all the little mini cities that were just just east of the pyramids. And then you've got these little mini pyramids that were the queen and the queen's daughter and the daughter's daughter. And that's kind of what these little mini pyramids were outside of the major pyramid. And then you have this one here was really pretty cool, because you can see on the top still has kind of the fascia or the drywall, if you will, or just the part of the pyramid that made them really smooth on each side, that had been hoarded over centuries and centuries to rebuild other stuff within Cairo. But the top of that one's still kind of preserved, so you can kind of see what it originally looked like. In fact, I was able to get out of the little horse and buggy that I had and stand right here on the corner of this and actually even touch it and like push my hands against it. And the boulder at this corner weighs like 30 tons. Just this one stone that's at the corner of this pyramid. Just insane. This place is insane. And then you ride kind of your little buggy over here. And this is one you can actually go into. It's a little bit smaller. And then you've got these other pyramids that were never finished. So these ones here are the smaller ones, again, for the queens that were never finished and then even damaged for resources and pillaged over the centuries. And then my little horse guy, the little guide that I was with, kind of took us over this little road here that kind of goes up onto this hill to where you can just see this whole valley just full of tourists and just all the pyramids that were there. Just absolutely nuts. In fact, I've got kind of a funny little photo the guy took with me. Let's see if I pulled that in here. So here's me holding up the pyramids. He would always do those types of photos. I got like 15 of them where he told me to stand in a certain position, and he would take a photo, and obviously that's what he was doing, just lining up the photo to make it look like that. That's kind of a little niche that the tourists there have, and the tour guides are always doing these little photos. They'll have you jump in the air, they'll have you do a bunch of stuff. But just the scale of these things was just insane. They really were like mountains in the desert. And just to see and be able to touch them was pretty crazy. But I got to tell you, I didn't really like the city of Cairo all that much. I mean, it was just very dirty, very loud, very dusty. Just so many people. I mean, look at this aerial photo. I don't think I've ever researched it again. And then you got New Cairo. It's kind of where the new capital is. You got a little bit newer part of town. I never made it over there. So I did definitely see kind of the older part of town. It's probably a little more rundown And there was just some areas here that were just ancient. Like the stuff on the side of the freeway here was just crazy to drive right by it on our way back to like the airport. And the Nile River cruise we did was like a 2-hour little slow cruise going down the Nile. They had like food and stuff like that. It was really pretty cool. So then after that, I spent kind of a quick day there, flew over here to Jordan for a quick, or not Jordan, sorry, Saudi Arabia. Where was that? Somewhere down here. Oh, I think it's further down. Here we go. So right here. So this is one of the major cities that's in Saudi Arabia. This is kind of how you would get to like Mecca and all that. So we kind of have a quick layover there. Oh, you know what? Didn't switch my maps. Sorry. All right, hold on. Let me zoom back out here. All right. So then from Cairo, which is up here, had a little 2-hour flight down to here. And then from here, flew all the way. One of the longest flights I've ever taken because of all the stuff I was trying to squeeze in to get back home. All the way back to JFK, New York, which I have never been to before. And it was so cool. Here's JFK. So I get off the flight. I book my next one to Vegas. I drop off kind of my big luggage to be able to get ready to go back to Vegas. I land there at about 9 a.m. Now, this is Sunday morning at 9 a.m. because basically the flight from Cairo to New York was like all night on Saturday night. So I get to Cairo Thursday night. I spend all day, this was Friday night. I get there Friday night. Spent all day Saturday just doing as much as I possibly could in Cairo. Just wore myself out completely, then flew clear across the whole ocean there, landed JFK at 9 a.m., get myself set up, get my tickets, do all that kind of stuff to get back to Vegas. Then I go outside and there's like a driver there just, hey, need a ride, need a driver. And I said, look, I got to be back here at 3. Here it is, like by this point it was maybe 11 at the latest. By the time I got my bags, rechecked them in, got my tickets, all this, probably 11 o'clock. So I said, I only have until about 3 and I got to be back here. But I'd love to see the 9/11 memorial. I'd love to see Madison Square Garden and really like to see Times Square. That's probably all the time I have for. The guy was really excited. He's like, get in, let's do this. So I said, fantastic. So we jump in, drive down there, go through those absolute huge skyscrapers going down there, jump out, literally take one quick video at the memorial. Wasn't able to go inside the actual memorial, just kind of where the area was, where the towers were. Was able to go to Madison Square Garden. I really wanted to go see there because I'm a big sports fan, and you got to think of all the events that have happened at Madison Square Garden between the Knicks, the basketball, between the concerts, the comedy shows, all the boxing matches. I mean, there is probably not a more known arena in the world than Madison Square Garden, and just all the things that have happened there, the championships that have been won. I mean, all that was just so cool to just go right up to the building, take a quick photo. And on the way, we were able to go by Times Square, which I've never been there either. I've never been to New York. In fact, this entire trip, DC, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Jordan, Cairo, New York, all those places I've never been before, and got all of them in one trip. Not planned, but that's just the way it worked out. And they even throw Vegas in there, even though I've been to Vegas, but threw in Vegas there. I mean, these are some of the biggest, most major known cities in the entire world. I was able to run around for a 20-day period and be able to see these things. So that was pretty cool. I've just never been to New York. I'd love to get back there. Probably plan another trip. I definitely want to get back to the museum, the Bible Museum in Washington, D.C., and just spend more time there. We weren't able to see kind of all the things in the mall, and we did go to the Aerospace Museum. That was well worth the day there. But we obviously didn't get to see everything in Washington. We didn't make it to the Lincoln Memorial. We didn't be able to see everything there. But really, really loved my time in New York and in D.C. First time I've ever been there. And also landing after being in Cairo, landing in New York City, man, I got out of that plane and I just kissed the ground. Like, back to America. This is awesome. Back home, safe and sound. No more sirens, no more missiles. It was just so cool to be back in America. And then, of course, flying back home, back to Vegas. That flight was probably the worst part of the whole trip. Because by that point, I'm just gassed, trying to do so much in that limited time that I had, trying to not spend a bunch of money, didn't have a lot of money to do this. And I really appreciate all the people that donate. I would not have been able to get home with all the extra expenses without a little bit of help with the people that donated. But that flight there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to get home was just brutal. The flight was pretty packed, didn't have a great seat, just couldn't sleep. My chair was busted. My monitor thing was busted. It was just a horrible flight. But boy, when I landed in Vegas, dragged myself to the claim for my baggage. Thank goodness it showed up. I had a lot of unlucky things with my baggage the whole trip, but that's a whole nother story. And then to just see my wife, I just lost and just completely collapsed when I saw her. But what an amazing trip. I've got so much footage. I'm going to get it posted here. I'm going to kind of go through each day, kind of deep dive some of this stuff. I didn't mean for this video to be so long, but I just wanted to kind of get some of these thoughts out. I have a bunch of people ask me, hey, how was your trip? And thought, well, here's the best way to be able to kind of film it. I mean, look at this world. So here to here, clear over to here, clear to here, clear to here, clear all the way back. It's just nuts to be able to go on this particular trip. And I really hope I can make it back to Israel. Just loved it. Loved Jerusalem. This is going to be in my heart forever. I loved Rome. That's one of the other things I want to go back to. But just absolutely love the fact I was able to go to the places I study about every day. I read about every day. I talk about all the time. To be able to go to that physical place that is in the Bible that I read about all the time, the age of the things there, just the antiquity that is there, just blows my mind at how beautiful that country is and the people that were there, the food that was there. I will be back. Israel, I will be back. Maybe I'll have some better crews with me that time. Maybe I'll have some better film cameras, all that kind of stuff. But look forward to going through all my cameras, all my footage to be able to really showcase what happened on this trip. So thanks for watching. I know this is the longest video I have on my channel so far. Hope to do a little more breakdowns of each day and each site that I was able to go to. But I really appreciate, again, everyone's helped to get me home. Your like and share, subscribe. Please comment. Let me know what you think. Yeah, that was my trip to the Holy Land. They'll name this war something, and I was there when it started. Just crazy to think about. So anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day. God bless, and we'll see you on the next video.